Welcome to Archery Talk 101 podcast, your guide to better archery skills. We'll bring you the latest tips, tricks, and expert advice, but that's not all. We'll also have interviews with top archers and industry professionals and reviews of the latest gear and equipment and much more. Hey, when you're hunting, how does it differ where you shoot than when you're shooting 3D targets? They are different. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about that and see how they differ. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm your host today on Archery Talk 101. And as I talked about the intro, we're going to be talking about how your shot placement will differ when you're hunting and when you're out shooting 3Ds. So to start with, let's just go ahead and kind of give a little difference on different ways you're going to shoot. Now you have your regular target, whether you're shooting a 5-spot, a 3-spot, a 1-spot field. You're pretty much going to be on the level, shooting level, and you're going to put your pin where you want it to go and go from there. Now, when you go to 3D shoots, now you don't know the distance. They could be different distances. On the regular target, you're generally going to know the distance. Now, some 3Ds do have marked yardages, but the ones I generally went to, they're unknown yardages, which is kind of what I like because I want to learn to judge yardage a little bit better and pick the pin. Now, when you look at the 3D target, you have your body, which is, a 5-point spot, and then you have a ring for your 8 and a ring for your 10. And some of them will put 12 rings in there where they're either a low one or they're really high, different places for them. Now you're shooting at the face of the target. So let's say, just go with the deer target. That's most what we're going to talk about is shooting deer targets. Because I know a lot of us, that's the main thing we're going to hunt for is going to be deer, whether it be whitetail, muley deers, the blacktails, Sika deers. They're all basically the internal structure is basically the same thing. There may be slightly differences, but I don't think there really is. So now when you're shooting at a 3D target, you're shooting at the exterior surface. The scoring rings are there. The scoring rings aren't inside. They're not on the back side. They're on the front side. So you're shooting for that spot. Now, when we go out hunting, now there's multiple ways to do it. If you're shooting from the ground, then you have a more of a flat trajectory to them. So you can kind of pick where it's at and you're shooting through. So let's just say you're shooting for a heart shot. Some of us don't go for heart shots, we go for lung shots, stuff like that. But let's just go for a heart shot. Now, a heart shot, where is the heart located on the deer? In the center, not on the outside edge. So you want to think of where it is in the center of the deer, in the middle, not on the outside surface. Now, if you're on a ground level, then you're pretty much going to aim where the heart is located, and you don't have to worry about it. You're going to go through that heart shot. Now, if you have a little bit different angle, let's say you're shooting up in a tree. Now that heart is in the middle. So where do you aim to go through that heart? Well, it depends on how high you are and how far the deer is away. So depending on your angle, you may have to, instead of shoot with the heart, shoot halfway up or further up, depending on the angle that you're shooting at. Because you want to go, let's say you're going for the heart shot, you're going to go through the heart. Now, the higher the angle, the more you're going to have a lower exit. A low exit on a deer, you don't have as good a blood trail because all the internal organs are going to basically plug up the hole until the blood fills up enough to start coming out the entrance hole. So you're going to be a time when you're not going to have a lot of blood coming out. Now you get a little bit higher and a little bit higher, and now you've got a complete bottom exit. So as you're going for those little bit different shots, you want to look at where's your arrow going to exit. That's probably, I think, a more important place to look at is where is the arrow going to exit? Is it going to exit on the bottom of the deer, or is it going to exit out on the far side? That's probably a bit more important, I think, is look for the exit point. Don't worry about where it goes in. Think of where it's going to exit out of the deer. Now, if you go on a really high lung coming in, maybe you got a little bit low lung coming out. Or maybe depending on your angle, you might be going through the heart coming out. Well, the higher up, the closer it is to you, the more that angle is, and the harder it is to really judge exactly where you want to shoot it. And then, of course, you want to stay back off of the shoulder blade, because that shoulder blade isn't too far above where the heart is. So now if it's quartering away, now you have a different angle. You're quartering towards you, it's a little bit different angle. So that's the kind of the challenge when you go out sitting in your tree stand, whether it be a hang on, a ladder stand, a climbing stand, or one of the new saddles that a lot of people are starting to use now. I don't use one. I haven't tried one yet. It might be cool to shoot out of one. I don't know. That's one of the things I haven't tried yet. But I normally use either a ladder stand or hang on stand. I prefer to be up in the air. It does give me a lot more visibility of where they're coming in, a little bit more angles. Nice thing about a blindo is you're on the ground. It's a little bit warmer in the wintertime. Here in Nebraska, for those watching the video, I have my Nebraska hat on. That's what I wanted to wear today. So that's what you want to look at. Where is it at? And quartering away shots. Now you might have to go back further and go through, catch part of the liver and the lung going through the deer going that way. Kind of my preferred shot is the liver and the lungs rather than going for the heart shot, because the liver bleeds quite a bit and then fills up the lungs, and then they collapse and go down fairly quick. The heart shots are nice, but I've seen deer with heart shots that have run a long ways. So it's just one of those things that hopefully you go in, don't catch any bones, and that arrow just goes whizzing right through, and they just kind of look around. It's like, what was that? Yeah, but that's I wanted to kind of talk about shot placement, because it does vary quite a bit based on where you're at and how far you're up in the tree and how far the deer is away. And then your shot distance, what do you shoot it for? That's the thing that gets a lot of archers, whether you're going to a 3D shoot. A lot of those are not on a single plane. They're up and down angles. A lot of them will put those in, and sometimes close shots, sometimes far shots, all kinds of different distances and ranges. And that's the thing you want to look at. And I want to kind of go over, well, I've got a little chance here, go over how to determine how far that deer is away from where you're at. Now, one thing you want to do is get used to judging yardages on the ground. There's several methods of doing that, where you can go through and just as you're walking around outside someplace and say, okay, I think that is 20 yards, and step it off. Now, to figure out what your distance is, go to known yardage. You use a tape measure or something, measure out 20 yards, there's 60 feet. You got that measured out. So between this point and this point, that is your 20 yards. Now, start stepping it off and count every other foot. Now, I normally start walking with my left foot first. And so every time my right foot hits the ground, I count. And I know I've stepped it off many, many times, and I know 11 and a half steps is 20 yards. So now I know the distance. I can step off 20 yards. So what you want to do is judge that yardage, get where you can judge that 20 yards, and then look at 10 yards, look at 30 yards, look 40 yards, whatever the distance is that you think you're going to be shooting at. And then go through and get where you can get that familiar with it, step it off. If you have a place where you have a tree and you can step off the distance, step off, like into a field. You want to make sure that you know how far that is. Now, where the problem comes in is you're in your tree stand, whether it be a ladder stand or a hang on stand or whatever it is, or you're just on the top of a hill and the trail is at the bottom of the hill. So how do you judge the yardage to know where to place the shot? Now, I like to take and judge my yardage, look at a tree that's on the trail and follow it up till it's the same height as me. So I'm level. So I'm looking straight across, and I judge the yardage to that tree at the same eye level that I'm at, not below, not above, judge it to that spot. And now then I'll follow that tree down where it hits the ground. And I know that that spot on that tree on the ground is that 20 yards, 30 yards, whatever I judged it to. Let's say I judged it to be 20 yards. And now I know that trail is 20 yards. Now when that deer comes walking down that trail, I'm going to use my 20-yard pin on it, no matter how big or small that is. And that's where you get messed up sometimes, because you look at that and says, no, that it's got to be further. Don't second guess yourself because you judge that to be 20 yards, because that is how far it is. And what you need to realize is that gravity works on the arrow, how far it travels horizontally, not how far it travels vertically. So if you're shooting out 20 yards, if it has to drop 50 yards, it's still a 20-yard shot. And there's angle compensation. I've got a it's a Vortex Ranger rangefinder. And what you can do is, as you're taking a picture or taking your range finding, as you're tilting down, there's a little thing in here that tells what angle you're tilting that at. And it knows that angle, what it ranged that to, the actual distance is actually less than what the straight line distance, because your rangefinders shoot out a little beam, an infrared beam off a surface, and comes back, and it knows how long it takes for that trip to go. That's how your radar guns work as well. But so it knows how far that is, but now it knows that angle. It does the calculations. It says, okay, this is really 20 yards, not the 40 that it looks like it is. So you want to get used to judging that. And I hunted for many, many years before I got my first rangefinder. I have yet to use a rangefinder when I'm out archery hunting. I did use it here a couple of years ago when I was rifle hunting, because where that's coming out, I wanted to make sure I set up, a couple hundred yards away from it. And I checked it, just say, yep, okay, I'm good. So you can use them for multiple things. You just want to look at the distance and make sure you have the distance right. Then you're going to know how to make that shot, because you're going to look at that deer and say, okay, this is a 20-yard shot. We're just going to assume everything is 20 yards. Just make it easier to figure out what's going on. So you got this 20-yard shot. No matter what the deer looks like, you're taking this 20-yard shot. Now you still want to look for the exit hole. Where do you want that exit to be? You don't want to look at the entrance hole. That doesn't matter as much as where it's going to exit. If you're exiting down at the bottom of the deer in the middle, you got a real high shot, and that can be a problem. Blood trailing for a while. Sometimes you can get out and not have hardly any blood trail at all for a while until it does fill up. I've had some of those before where you shoot and there's no blood trail for a few feet, few yards, and then sometimes you have massive blood trail. I had one time I shot, and I didn't see any blood trail for a while, and I probably 10 yards, here was the blood trail. And I've had other times where blood trail immediately. It just all depends on where that arrow is exiting and where they're bleeding out of. Whether it be a hole that is not plugged up by the internals, then it's going to bleed a lot quicker. So I just want to go through and do a little quick information on shot placement, because it is deer season now, and I know a lot of us are out there, and it's something to think about is, where do you want that exit hole to be? Think about that as you're making your shots, as well as pick your spot. We've all done that. Forget to aim and just pull back and aim this way. Now you're aiming for the entrance, but you're thinking about where is that actually going to exit. And that's kind of where I'm at. I just want to get some of that out before we get going too far. If you have any questions, if you have any other responses, if you have a little bit different method of doing it, make sure you leave a comment. I try to look at all the comments to see what's going on. And, if you have a better way of doing it, I'd like to hear it. I'm always open to suggestions on other things to think about, but that's just kind of what's going on. Now, just remember, there's multiple ways to listen to this podcast. You can listen to it on Spotify and like Apple Podcasts, and there's a couple other places that host podcasts. You can get those out there, as well as you can go out to Audible and get you can listen to it. You can get it from there. There's no cost for it on Audible. It's a free podcast, so you can listen to that, as well as you can go out to my YouTube channel, which is called Learn to Fix It Yourself, and you can watch the videos. You know, some of those that get the video, we actually get to see what's going on when we do interviews. It'll be myself and whoever we're interviewing, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 4 people, however many's on there, you'll get to watch them. And probably the best way to watch the video is go ahead and join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. There you get to see it live right now. They have access to the video right now as we're recording it, and they can actually write comments, and then we can read them. So that's one thing that advantage to be in that group, as well as there's archery instructors in there. I've been an archery instructor since 1995, and then there's also bow techs in there. There's new bow techs, old bow techs. I started working on bows professionally in 2001, after I got my an archery store. It was also fishing and other things. It was, you know, sporting goods store. And I went down and spent a week down in Tucson, Arizona at the PSC plant when I become a PSC dealer. And I've been working on bows ever since, making strings, working on bows, all kinds of different stuff. Some of these new bows is a little bit more difficult for me to work on because I don't have a bow press for them. Might have pressed the old bows, but not too much on the newer ones because they're a little too short and a little bit different design. But you know, you can get that information or post information. There's no advertising in the group. So other than, you know, archery events, you know, that you're, you know, free to post an archery event. So just go ahead and join that group and get your questions answered. Or you can ask, you know, post a question or comment, and I'll take a look at it. And if I can help you, I'd be glad to help you. So once again, my name is Roy Canterbury. I've been hosting Arch Talk 101, and we'll see you on the next one.